Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai, and today we're going to be pruning this overgrown juniper bonsai. Alright, so this is the tree that we're going to be working on here today, and as you can see it is quite overgrown and it kind of looks like an Itoigawa juniper, but it's not. It didn't look like this when I found it 2 years ago, although it kind of resembled this whenever I found it. It was just a big bush. It didn't really look like much as a bonsai. When I first got this, I gave it a first styling, and all I did was simply get a thick piece of wire, wrap it around the trunk of the tree and give it a simple S-curve. I pruned off a few problem branches that could have caused inverse taper in certain areas, but really I just left a lot of the foliage on this tree to grow wild, and then just before the wire began to bite into the trunk, I unwired it, and as you can see here now on the tree, that S-curve is now still in place. And I would say since I've planted this into this pond basket, the tree has probably doubled in thickness in just 2 years. Even though I'm giving this tree an overall prune today, that doesn't mean I want to stop thickening the trunk. I would like this tree to double in thickness again, but as this tree has put on so much growth over the last 2 years, it has also got quite a lot of problem branches, and if I just let this tree grow wild and out of control, this may give me more problems to deal with in the future, where if I deal with them now, it may set the tree back a little. It will have to recover after the prune, but when it does recovers and begins growing again, it will have a much better structure, less problems, and then in the end it may be a nicer looking bonsai. It is a longer root, but I think this may be a better route by pruning this today. Please let me know in the comments if you would do this, or perhaps you would let yours just go completely out of control for another 5 years. And now before we begin, the tools that we'll be using in this video today are twig cutters, branch cutters, wire cutters, and some gin pliers. And as always, by no means do you need all of these specialized bonsai tools. If you're just getting started in bonsai and you're a complete beginner, you can get by with just an ordinary pair of garden scissors or some cheap secateurs, just whatever you have at your disposal to get a specific job done. But you do want to make sure that whatever tools that you do have are clean and sharp. Clean so we don't introduce any bacterial or fungal infections to our tree. And in horticulture, sharp cuts heal so much faster and more efficiently than a blunt cut that was squashed by a dull blade. Usually whenever we have a problem in bonsai, it is really good to look for the trunk. So if I pull these branches out of the way, there's the trunk. That is the main line of the tree. And every tree that we work on will have a front or preferred viewing angle. I chose this as the front 2 years ago when I first gave it this S-curve. Another potential front would be around this side here, but I would have to remove quite a lot of branches just so that we could see that nice trunk line. And if I thought this side looked better as a front, I could even change my mind and rework the tree to have this as the front, but I'm going to stick with my plan and go with this side. And already, as you can see here, this branch is covering that nice front. Now I'm going to look at this branch and think to myself, do I need this branch? Is that going to be a good branch on the overall design of the tree? It is beginning to thicken this branch here quite a bit. On the inside, as you can see, this branch is quite thick, and it's beginning to get almost just as thick as the trunk, and this is what we would call a competing trunk line. At the moment I wouldn't really call it a competing trunk line because it's not quite as thick as the main trunk, but if this whole branch here is left any longer, we could get what's known as inverse taper, and that is a swelling in this area, especially when there's a branch directly below it. And even just another 1 year or 2 years, it could send this tree out of shape. And now the question is, which one of these branches do we keep? The bottom one or the top one? I'll let you guys pause the video now, make a decision, leave a comment if you wish to. And the decision that I have made is to remove the bottom one, simply because the top one is perfectly on the outside of a bend, and if this is wired down, I think it will look quite nice and uniform. The bottom one here is sort of growing at a strange angle out the back of the tree. It isn't quite on the outside of a bend on the line of the trunk. I'm going to remove this one. Big decision here. Let's get rid of that. Quite a lot of foliage. And now I'm just going to clean up this cut. I want it pretty flush with the trunk. I'm just coming in here. I'm happy with that. And now just to clean up this pad, take some of the Vigour out of it so this branch doesn't thicken much more. So whenever this is a complete tree in the future, I would like it to be just a little pad in this area. Here this branch is quite long and doesn't really have much taper along the branch. So I'm just going to shorten that back to here for now. I may take it further in again. This branch is also getting quite long, so I'm just going to prune it back to here, nice and tight and compact. And whenever the foliage on this branch elongates and gets long and bushy again, you'll get nice taper along there. This one's getting quite long, I'm just going to shorten this. And whenever I cut a branch, I never want to cut a branch back and leave nothing on the branch at all. If you do this with a juniper, there's a good chance that that branch will die. So you always want to leave some green. This branch is what I would call dangling growth, but more than that, it's growing sort of in the crotch of a branch up here. And that is definitely something I don't want to encourage. So I'm going to prune that right off. And as you can see, we have thinned out to this part of the tree quite a bit. As a general rule with junipers, we don't tend to remove any more than 1/3 of the overall foliage on a tree at any one time. And this is simply to prevent the tree from reverting back to the juvenile growth that it has. As you can see in here, this spiky foliage is known as the juvenile growth. Whereas if you look at the ends of the branches up here, we have what's known as the adult foliage. But because this tree is in development and I'm not really at the refinement stage yet, I just want to get it thicker, clean up some problems with it. I totally don't mind at all if the entire tree reverted back to the juvenile growth. So I am going to be pretty harsh on this tree today. This little branch is crossing the trunk line, so I'm just going to cut it into there. Now moving up along the trunk again, whenever I work on bonsai, I like to work from the base to the top of the tree. So we've dealt with this first branch. If you're wondering about this branch down here, I'm not going to do anything to this very lowest branch. This is what is known as a sacrificial branch, and in bonsai we keep branches like this at the very base of the tree, and the main job of this branch is to help thicken the base of the trunk, so we get that nice taper going from thick to thin the whole way to the top. And whenever this trunk reaches the desired thickness that I want, I will then come in and remove this sacrificial branch. Now moving up to this next branch, it is in a really nice position on the outside of this bend, just how that one is down here. This little branch is on the inside of a bend, so let's just solve that problem. And here, this branch comes off the trunk and then immediately splits in two. Right now this isn't much of a problem, but long term we will get inverse taper right here. So I'm going to remove one of these. I like how it travels out from here and then tapers into this lower branch. So for that reason, I'm going to remove the top one. That looks a lot nicer to me now. Unlike this branch over here, which I think has reached the desired thickness, I don't think this one has. It's a little bit thin. So for that reason, I'm going to keep all of the foliage on the end of this branch. So this part of the tree will keep getting vigorous and growing thicker. And then eventually when this branch reaches the desired thickness that I want, I can then come in, prune it back and reduce the vigor. There's another little branch here growing straight up. I'm not going to take it off completely, but I am going to shorten it. No other problems along here. Structurally, this little branch is growing on the inside of the curve. I'm trying to think whether or not it could be wired back like this to fill the back part of the tree. Just where it is, I don't think this is going to work either, so I'm going to remove that. In the future, we will get more back buds and we might get a more desirable one back here, but for now, this one I just don't think works. Now coming up to the crown of the tree, or apex. Back here there is this branch which is trying to be an apex, and there's this branch that's trying to be an apex, and there is multiple branches coming from the one area at the top. And if you leave all these branches here, you will get massive amounts of inverse taper here because they're all pulling sap. You will get what's known as like a golf ball in this area. You can actually see if you look close. You could say that this is the start of that. I can actually see just a little swelling in that area. So I really want to take the apex and get it under control, because although we want this to thicken, we want the trunk to thicken in the correct way. So leaving this completely unchecked for another 5 years could make the design of the tree worse rather than better. Just at this area of the apex, I just don't feel that this branch is doing any good. It's in between the two main branches of the tree. It's going to start swelling here, so I'm going to remove this one from here. That lets us see now what's going on further up. And there are two main branches that are trying to become the leader of the bonsai. And now it's up to us here which one of these we want to keep. They look both roughly the same thickness, so I don't think it really matters. If I follow this trunk line up, it's got this curve, so it makes more sense for the tree to want to come back into this direction. We do have many options. I could even remove that and wire this one into that direction, but I just feel like why not work with what the tree's providing? Remove all this, that is naturally going this way anyway. I'm going to remove this one, so let's chop this here. It looks quite drastic now. This is all we've removed. And to ensure the next branch tapers nicely from the trunk into it, I'm going to clean up this little stump. And because this is quite a big cut that we have made, I'm just going to apply some cut putty on this area. And this cut putty will help keep moisture out of the tree, but it will also help keep moisture from escaping from the tree. And this particular cut putty has a growth hormone in it that will help it heal so much faster. And while I'm here, I'm going to do this cut also. Now I'm just looking for more problems. This one is growing in a really weird spot. Get rid of that. These ones are growing on the inside of this bend. This one can be shortened down to here. That way we've got this branch for depth at the back. Now I'm just checking to see if there is any problems with this branch. There isn't any competing trunk line branches that would create weird inverse taper. I'm pretty happy with that. So the first branch that I'm going to wire is this one here, probably to about here, so it's got a nice bend and curve from the trunk. And in bonsai, when we wire with what is known as the 2-branch principle. And this is wiring 2 branches together with 1 piece of wire. That way when you wire, each branch is anchored to the other and it holds it most efficiently. So I'm going to wire this branch to this sacrificial one down here. And I'm going to take a little bit of scrap aluminium bonsai wire. I believe this is 4mm. And I'm going to bring the wire and measure it along the branch to make sure that we have enough. And I'm going to come under the branch here. You could also start at this point here, but because I'm wiring it to this branch below, I would rather come under this branch, making sure I give myself plenty of wire. I'm going to come up and around the branch. You want the distance between each coil to be roughly the same, and I found the angle of about 45 degrees works pretty well. Of course, depending on the branch, you could wire tightly or even more loose. And then with this other piece of the wire to anchor it, I'm going to come down around the trunk. I'm just going to use these gin pliers to help me get it around the branch and around there. So as you can see now, this branch is really easy to manipulate. I can pull it down and it should stay in place for us if we just pull it down here. I'm just going to use these gin pliers to help me wire the end of the branch. That way we have full control over the branch right from the base to the end. I'm actually going to straighten this branch just a little more out this direction, pull it down, and then on this pad I'm going to wire this extra little branch. And as you wire, be really careful not to trap any of the foliage under the wire, because any of the foliage that you do trap is probably going to die off. And then we can just bring this down and shape it how we like. I like this here, nice spacing between this branch, and I really don't like this one, so I'm going to cut that there. And now this pad has been trained nice and flat. Now I want to show you guys a nice simple trick that makes the world of difference. As this looks right now as a tree, it kind of looks a little bit out of balance, in that in order to bring the tree back and make the apex of the tree look like it's in line with the base, I would need to bend this back in this way and make this bend tighter to get it over that way like that and make it look good. Or we could just recorrect the tree. And although it is not repotting season and we have worked on the top of this tree, we can disturb the roots just a little, but not so much that it's like a full repot. All I'm going to do is push the tree, dislodge the roots just a little so that it's at the correct angle that I want. Now there's a hole where we've just lifted the soil underneath, so I want it to be approximately there. And then the hole that we've created in the pond basket, we're going to take a chopstick, push the soil down into that, and then once we have filled that void, we can let go with our thumb and theoretically the tree should stay in place. That looks so much better. I'm going to do a little bit more and maybe top it up with some more soil with just a little bit here, and we can push that down into all the little crevices. And with that, that is all that I'm going to do to this tree for today. And with this approach, we are really thinking like 5-10 years ahead in the development of this tree. Perhaps in the future, this pad here will get better, a lot more fuller. This bottom branch, which I previously considered a sacrificial branch, could even just make a nice first branch. I'm hoping this branch on top of here will get longer and thicker. I don't really want to go and prune anything on the apex of this tree, because as it is now, the leader has a terminal bud on the end, and that's just going to want to shoot up. If I go and clip that terminal bud off the top of the tree, it's going to want to grow another side branch that's going to then go and become the leader. And by pruning the top of the tree like that, we'll just simply slow it down in its thickening process. So we're just going to let all this grow wild. But all that is left to do now is give this tree a water. And there you guys have it. On that, I'm going to end off this video right here. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like on this video. It really helps out the channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And please let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Perhaps there's something you would have done differently with this juniper. Maybe you would have even just styled it today and called it a finished tree and tried to refine it at that. I'm always open to new and different ideas in bonsai. If you would like to support me and the things that I do on this channel, hit the thanks button down below. Or if you'd like to become a channel member, hit the join button. That way you'll get early access to new videos before they go out to everyone else, and you will get access to membership posts. If you want to keep up to date with all the things that I do off camera and the progression of my trees, please follow me on Instagram. It's @NotionBonsai, and you can see all the things that I do on there. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.